I object, ladies and gentlemen. I object. I object. That man will never be able to pay me the money he owes me by paying all these other bills. So we were just having a conversation about a good movie called Idiocracy. If you haven't seen it, you ought to check it out. It's a good flick. But it reminded us of the show, I Object. I am your guest host, Steve Spencer. I'm filling in for Jerry Ward. Don't fear, ladies and gentlemen, if you're used to tuning in to a show with a very intelligent, highbrow, intellectual dialogue between two sophisticated people, that's not what you're getting this week. But here's what you are getting. I'm filling in for Jerry, and she will be back next week. I'm sure she'll have a fantastic host, and I'm sure that she'll renew your faith in her show after whatever damage I have done to it here for this hour. But I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to Jerry for the invitation to do so. And let's go back to our original topic that we opened the show with. I talked about parental rights and grandparent visitation issues. Let's talk about that a little deeper. What about parental rights in the divorce context? What about parental rights when there's an assumption or a presumption that one parent is better than the other based on gender? Texas did away with that a long time ago in the books, but they didn't necessarily do away with it in the minds of a whole lot of judges or jurors. And Texas did away with no-fault divorce. And so there's a lot of presumptions out there about children and where they should go. There's also, ladies and gentlemen, a terrific aspect of parental rights that if you wanted to get involved in something today, you could do so. And here's how. Your local district attorney. Now let's go back to the FLDS case out there in El Dorado, Texas. Clearly the state overstepped its authority in removing those children from their parents' care, control, and custody. But in order to do that, they had to have a DA that represented them. In that particular case, they had the Attorney General of the state of Texas represent them. But what about your local DA, ladies and gentlemen? What about your local DA in Dallas County or Tarrant County in Fort Worth or around the United States, your local DAs who represent Child Protective Services, and they do it on the flimsiest of evidence? A local DA could be a great buffer to protecting parental rights by saying, you've got to come to me with something stronger than this if I'm going to take your case up to a judge. You're going to have to do better than this. You're going to have to come with more than the liar, liar, pants on fire defense or the I think prosecution. I think these parents are doing this. I think these parents are doing that. I think this child is not getting this or that or is having this or that happen to them. You've got to come with something better than that. And a local DA could be a great first line of defense in that regard. Here's another way a local DA could go a long way toward restoring parental rights in the United States. Most jurisdictions, certainly in Texas, but in many jurisdictions, there are statutory provisions allowing for the prosecution of a false complaint. So when you have an angry parent who retaliates against another parent, against his or her former spouse or soon-to-be former spouse, when you have that happen, there are mechanisms that allow for the prosecution of that false complaint. Don't underestimate your ability, ladies and gentlemen, to step to the forefront and make a difference by challenging a local official to follow the law that's already on the books. We're not talking about making new law. We're talking about following the law that's on the books. Had something like that happened in the El Dorado case, we might not have had this. Maybe we wouldn't have seen enormous amounts of money being spent on lawyers and petitions being filed in the Texas Supreme Court. Perhaps that could have been stopped at a lower level. Personally, I don't think so. I think the FLDS case is an anomaly. I watched our Texas legislature conspire to attack the folks out in El Dorado, Texas, beginning back in 2005. Wow, what an experience that was. So what do you think about all that? I know I've had plenty to say, but tell me where you are. Do you object? Man, I know that a lot of you object to what I've said in this hour. But I appreciate you listening, and we're going to talk some more about different parental rights-related issues. How do you get to direct the education and upbringing of your child. Well, in California appellate court said just recently, hey, unless you are a certified teacher yourself, then you do not have a constitutional right to homeschool your child. Are you kidding me? I mean, are you really kidding me? Did a court really say that? I object. Let's talk about that for a minute. California appellate court said that because a parent was not a certified teacher, that parent didn't have the constitutional right to homeschool their child. Well, in Texas, the homeschool community had to fight for years just to have the state recognize their fundamental constitutional right to homeschool their children without the interference of the government. A state called Leeper, the Leeper case here in the state of Texas, finally articulated and confirmed the right of parents to direct their children's education, including in the homeschool environment, without the interference of the government and without being subject to the jurisdiction of the state. So those issues play very heavily into the fundamental issue of parental rights as a whole. So let's put it all into a bit of a summary capsule. Where do we take all of that? Well, if you have the right to say, my child is not going to hang out with the drug dealer down the street anymore, shouldn't you have the same right to say, my child is not going to associate with anybody whom I do not believe is good or whom I believe is bad for my child, including maybe a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle? That's a heartbreaking decision to make. But do you agree or disagree that a parent should have the right to make that decision, even if you don't agree with it? Even if you don't agree with the decision, do you agree that the parent should have the right to make that decision, or do you object? What about homeschooling? Do you believe that homeschooling that is structured around a Christian doctrine of living, do you believe that should be permitted? Do you believe a parent has the right to make that choice? And if you do, then do you agree that a parent also has the right to make that choice if they choose to raise their child in a homeschooling environment centered around a liberal arts education? It may not work for your kid, may not work for my kid, but it might work for their kid. So should you be able to override those parental decisions? My answer to all of that is no, ladies and gentlemen. You shouldn't be able to. There's only certain ways that you should be able to override parental decisions, and they're pretty high standards of evidence you have to reach. I appreciate all of you joining me. The show is I Object. Your host is Jerry Ward. She'll be back with you next week. I'm Steve Spencer, filling in for Jerry. We'll be back for just a quick wrap-up of the show. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. We're going to close up the show. I want to take just a minute to thank our producers, John, and he has just been so patient, so fabulous with me. And I certainly want to thank Jerry's assistant, Teresa. I just happen to be the fat guy who's sitting in the chair today. There's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes to make this show go. Certainly thanks to Jerry Ward for the invitation to fill in for the show as I Object with Jerry Ward. I am your guest host this week, Steve Spencer. Jerry will be back next week. I'm sure she'll have something infinitely more entertaining than me rambling for an hour, because she generally has very thoughtful dialogue and interviews with guests, and I'm looking forward to hearing it on the next episode. Right Talk Radio, don't forget, we tell your friends about it. Make sure you tune in. We certainly appreciate you being a member of the audience. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. What all we talk about today? We talked about Obama. We talked about Clinton. Talked about McCain. We talked about the Ron Paul revolution that I think is still brewing out there. I don't think it should ever be underestimated. And by way of disclosure, I'm not a Ron Paul supporter, but I can read and I can see what's happening out there in the winds, and I think it'd be foolish to think that guy's candidacy is completely done. It may not be successful, but I don't think it's completely done. What else we covered? We covered some parental rights-related issues. Now, we talked about the FLDS case out in El Dorado, Texas. As we close the show, I want to applaud Jerry Ward for stepping in and helping some of those families when no one else would, when far too few people were willing to do so. And in this world, I believe you can make a difference or you can make excuses, but you can't make both. Jerry Ward's a person who makes a difference, and I honor her efforts to do so. We talked about parental rights in the context of grandparent visitation issues and CPS, your local DAs, what they can do to help you. I think there's going to be some interesting changes happen over the next year or so. Certainly going to be interesting to watch what happens in the presidential race. I'm looking forward to seeing it all. I hope I get to visit with all of you again. I appreciate you joining us here on Right Talk Radio, where I object. Filling in for your host, Jerry Ward, my name is Steve Spencer here on Right Talk Radio. Thanks so much for giving us a listen. Take care. Bye-bye.
This is Right Talk Radio.